Hi, everyone.
Привет, Жень. Здорово.
Hi, we finally get to meet. We are really happy to inform you we have finalized our new Tarot de Marseille of the new Incarnation deck of cards. As you know, we've had a few teething issues with our printing. We can finally talk to each other, though. The whole preparation process took a while to sort out, as this new deck is extremely unique. The printing production has now also commenced. We'd also like to inform you we've also changed our publishing agency and also changed some design features, which unfortunately has held us back with the release of this new set of cards. However, all the issues, I'm happy to say, have been addressed, and we can now talk about why we chose this project. What is different about our new deck? What differs our project from an enormous number of others? As you know, the original Marseille deck is very famous in the world of tarot now.
Да.
Hence, I would like to talk about that difference and why we decided to develop a new concept of the deck. I also remember you mentioning that you were talking to one of your colleagues about a month ago, and you discussed a new deck and you showed it to him. I also remember he asked you a question why we decided to call it Marseille. Well, there is a traditional Marseille deck where pip cards are drawn as abstract symbols. What we did is we changed the abstract cards, for example pips, into a properly drawn deck. What can you add to this?
Я со своей стороны хочу сказать,
I
что
certainly would like to say for certain some kind of unspoken tradition has been established. The Tarot of Marseille is a deck with non-drawn arcana pipes, which are already excellent themselves, as everyone knows. From my practice, I have noticed that people mainly use the major arcana or trump cards as they're known, as these started to be called arcana later than when the Marseille deck appeared. Or they can use the minor arcana ones. This requires a certain amount of imagination and also some kind of mathematical approach. Exactly, Elsa. It requires a good memory. You're right, Eugene. Yes, if you take one of the minor arcana cards, you will find triangles, square numbers, sticks and circles. All these features are incredibly beautiful. Showcasing their beauty makes the game a pleasant experience. You would have to agree with that. Unfortunately, it makes it difficult for the tarot reader to predict the future with those symbols. By using those symbols, Marseille retained his uniqueness, while also alienating others. For example, I have been working as a tarot teacher since 2001, and I have only conducted perhaps 5 courses on the Marseille tarot deck. So tell me, what is the reason for this? Did they not find it interesting? I believe this might have frightened people off. I think right away it sort of spoiled people, as he'd had a ready-made picture. Unfortunately, it wasn't always that expressive. For example, let's have a look at the Eight of Wands. It is depicted as 8 flying wands that appear as if they are suspended in mid-air. The question is, where are they flying? Why are they flying? One thing is for clear. It has a connection to Kabbalah. At the same time, if this connection would explain the meaning of this picture properly, then people wouldn't have disagreements in its meaning. There would be one opinion that is either energy, acceleration, or deceleration, or it would be a decline or rise. Many tarot masters usually agree on the interpretation of such cards. Also, Rider-Waite has some cards without proper explanation, and even these pictures do not explain much. Yes, this certainly simplified the approach. Yes, this definitely simplified the approach and combine the tarot system with the oracle system. The oracle is always drawn. There is always a symbol. Therefore, when my colleague found out that you and I were doing the Marseille tarot deck with the drawn minor arcana, he also asked why we named it the Marseille Tarot. Let me explain this for you. We wanted to simplify, we actually wanted to simplify everything for the modern tarot card reader. A tarot deck is like a book. The pictures make reading the cards more accessible and a pleasant experience. For example, children love pictures. We all agree on that, and our consciousness operates better with the visual symbols. A recognizable picture is easier to understand than some conventional symbols. Why did we choose to name our deck the Tarot of de Marseille? Let me explain. This is not the Tarot de Marseille. This is the new Tarot de Marseille of the Incarnation. For example, Rider-Waite made a drawing of the minor arcana cards, and everyone likes it. The Marseille deck hasn't been touched for a long, long time. Our deck is a new reincarnation of the Marseille deck. We have not been able to find a single deck that would have been drawn in the Marseille system. However, you can find them in the Rider-Waite system. We have used the works of the best authors who describe the Marseille system. These are Matthews, Gear, and Marteau. We mainly use Paul Marteau's work. He isn't very famous in Russia, though. Paul Marteau's work has not been translated into Russian. I just happened to stumble across his book in French. It is really rare. Even in France, it's hard to find. I can definitely say that we rely less on the psychological concepts of the Tarot de Marseille and more on the predictive concepts. Therefore, we named it Tarot de Marseille of the Incarnation, as it is made in the style and system of the Marseille. For example, we have images which are formed from the meaning of the major arcana, according to the traditional Marseille. The researchers and the fathers of the tarot thought that the 10 minor arcana cards correspond to the 10 major arcana of Marseille cards. There are still other approaches you can use, like the first 10 cards corresponding to the ace and the 11th tarot card. For example, this can be the Magician. Another example is the second tarot card, which corresponds with the 12th and 21st tarot cards. Or put simply, it corresponds to cards where the number 2 is present. We can all agree on this, as this is one of the approaches I do not know if it adds a lot of value to the reading of the minor arcadia. It certainly enriches the meaning. Additionally, the meaning of each card is made up of the meaning of the suit, which in the Middle Ages had certain meanings. For example, the swords were military, the wands were peasants, cups were priests. Find that quite interesting actually. These all represented emotions. Pentacles were merchants, and all those who practice finance. As for the numbers, the base is also similar. Numerology back in those days differed from numerology now. We call this the Pythagorean numerology system. I have noticed that many people, actually, especially our Russian audience, do not really understand the difference between the decks made in the Marseille style. They say that similar decks have already been introduced before. A similar deck was released 6 months ago. Again, not in the same concept that we have created. Eugene, do you mean the French author? Yes, I think her name is Emmanuelle. Her deck is called La Tarot de Marseille. Wait. Emmanuelle said the concept of major arcana of Marseille are interesting, powerful and strong, and Waite has such powerful minor arcana. So she took both of these and combined them. We both agree that we are opposed to mixing the systems. There are many decks where it looks like Marseille's tarot, but in fact the minor arcana are drawn in Waite's style. I would like to let our listeners know we haven't mixed our deck with other systems that are not in the Marseille style. Yes, we believe we have been as authentic and true as we could. You have drawn wonderful images. Yes, this is correct. We wanted to keep in the style of the major arcana. For example, when you take a regular deck of Marseille, for instance, Grimoire, you can be easily confused when you see the minor arcana, as we are used to seeing the minor arcana as symbols. As all known, major arcana is drawn in a certain style, and it makes sense to draw minor arcana in the same style as the major ones. I'm taking this approach for people living in the 21st century. In addition, I want to highlight that major arcana was endowed with esoteric meanings, while the minor arcana cards were used to play games and not predict the future. Oh, by the way, do you remember when I spoke at the assembly in Israel and mentioned that the major arcana cards were used to play games? Speaking in detail, the cards were created for the Arab community. They were created out of 4 suits along with major arcana in order to directly or indirectly get away from attacks from the church. Major arcana cards created by Visconti Forza made him religious and moralizing. The cards had a Renaissance character. The cards had divine comparisons. I mean, they compared them to ancient gods. There were 22 cards, as there are 22 Old Testament books. And this, of course, reflects the number of books. This is not my opinion. This is based on actual studies from the Italian Tarot Card Association. Of course, they do not insist this is true, but they assume that it is, of course, possible. Considering that Italy is the birthplace of tarot, we can probably trust their intensive research as they have access to a multitude archive of documents. You know, when I was preparing for this meeting, I read Paul Martu, and I noticed that the minor arcana cards are drawn very vaguely. They are mainly based on geometry and the understanding of the philosophy of geometry. I believe this is quite a complex approach. It's a little sophisticated approach in some parts. Many artists would actually say, I see the drawing in this particular way. Personally, I see it differently. Therefore, we had a strong desire to visualize these cards. That is what we ended up doing in the end. We were surprised that no one had attempted this before. We also discussed that when an exhibition with the Solar Busca deck took place at the British National Museum in London, Rider-Waite was one of the first visitors. I think that may have influenced him to create what we see in his most popular Rider-Waite deck of cards now. Do you agree? Then thousands of cards ended up being published, and people really enjoyed them. If you focus on some specific examples of the cards, for instance, let's have a look at 8 of Wands and 5 of Cups. Please tell us about the card structure. Have a look at our 8 of Wands. I love this card. It is one of my favorites. Such an amazing card. It shows a lady breastfeeding a very cute baby. This is an amazing card you picked. Don't you agree? Can you see in this card that her husband is doing some work next to her? She is sweating because of the hard work. She is also breastfeeding on one side and spinning yarn on the other. We have all the cards marked, unlike the Rider-Waite's ones. On the left side, you can see a suit mark. In this case, this is the Wands. Tell me how you describe this card in your book, please. In my book, I applied my experience, knowledge, and education. Firstly, the Tarot of Marseille was intended for rich people, the Dessert deck. Then at some point, the deck became accessible to the masses. By this time, the major arcana had slightly changed. It became more daring. For example, nudity appeared on the cards. For instance, the Star card. I believe when tarot became accessible among regular people, soldiers started using them to play games, and they liked to see these kinds of images on the cards. In relation to the minor arcana cards, not only the minor arcana, but the rest as well, you can easily describe what is shown on the cards. I remember that in the Middle Ages, it was famous, and even a little later during the Renaissance period, for fables, which are one of the most popular forms of presentation, the most ancient form. This was initially famous in Greece and Rome. Fables were used by everyone. There was also schwanks, short, chirpy, funny urban stories, like urban anecdotes. Then novellino. I think it's novellino, Italian ones. Since we are dealing with the Marseille Tarot, this takes roots in France and Switzerland. I decided to describe them as a fable. Before we take a look at 8 of Wands, I want to mention to those who ask if the minor arcana are made in the Rider-Waite style. The simple answer is no. They are made exactly in the style and system of the Marseille Tarot, which assuming that the meaning of the minor arcana cards is made up of numerological meaning, and in our case of number 8. If we compare this card to the Rider-Waite one, some listeners probably will say, why is the meaning of this card not inertia? As the lady is feeding the child and spinning yarn, while the husband is doing his job. The problem is that very few people interpret Rider-Waite 8 of Wands as inertia, while most people consider it as an acceleration or a slowing down of the process. On the other hand, 8 means infinity, and the 8th trump card is justice, which is responsible for official relations with their burdens and obligations. For example, if a woman gets married, she must give birth to a child and take care of the house. It was a typical lifestyle scenario in the Middle Ages and during the Renaissance period. The 8 means a constant cycle in nature and the infinite repetition of the same scenario over and over again. As I mentioned before, I describe cards as a fable. In our case, the story tells us about a woman who is not quite smart, but inherited lots of life experiences from her mother and nannies. She knows how to build a life, while her husband should be under her supervision and provide for her family. By the way, the plot is always archetypal. You and I relied on the best authors of Marseille, and we wanted to stick to their work. Do you remember that in some moments I resisted and was saying that I see these cards a little differently? I suggested making them based on my experience. It would also correspond to the combinations of numbers. The description of the suits, the number of the major arcana, but they may have a slightly different meaning. You said no, let's stick with the great masters. We relied not only on one master's work, but on many others. I had an idea, and it's good that you stopped me from getting away from the Marseille tarot system. You suggested making a small image and a plot. It's good that you stopped me. Otherwise, it would not have been the new Incarnation Marseille. It would have reminded you of some Italian, German decks during the 16th and 17th centuries that already exist. So, the card 8 of Wands is made up of the suit, meaning you can see both of the partners working without no end in sight. It is an infinite repeated cycle, and there is nothing you can do with it. At first glance, it may seem like the meaning to the 8th card from Rider-Waite's deck, but it is different. This is precisely the plot. There are repetitions of the plot, which is approved by human traditions. A woman should give birth, take care of the house, a man should work to infinity, and this cycle repeats from generation to generation. It is very difficult to get out of this cycle because it is approved by some social traditions and may even be religious. The depicted plot is easy to read, and it has humor, beauty and grace. It has everything, in my opinion. For example, another brilliant card, 5 Deniers. If we take Rider-Waite's card, then this is the famous card where a beggar walks past a church, where the window is made out of pentacles. The poor are seen passing by happiness. There is a wonderful plot here. There is a tradition. Here, 2 witches are trying to make a kind of potion, appealing to heaven, so that it rains down on the dried up earth, so people can have a good harvest. The number here is 5, which represents developments, struggles and breakthroughs. Here is a drought. A village and people are praying, but nothing helps. What else can they do? The last and unsafe step during that period is to ask witches for help, which was very dangerous in those times. It was a kind of breakthrough. I think if such miracles did happen, then magic would not have been popular for centuries. Look, people are dropping something into the cauldron, saying something incomprehensible to the cauldron, and immediately it starts to rain. There is a great difference in the meaning of 5 between Rider-Waite and Marseille. Yes, there is a huge difference. But I would like to note that Rider-Waite's deck was made based on Marseille. There was also another Attila deck, based on which the Rider-Waite deck was made. Even Mathers wrote about it. Of course, there may be some crossovers. I love our cards, not only because we made them. Look at 9 of Swords, for example, in Waite's deck. A woman jumps up from the couch in horror. There is fear and panic attacks in this card. But the woman here is just taking a sword and chopping her husband's head off. It looks like he deserved it. In modern society, it is now impossible, but then it was possible to do this. Let's have a look at 5 of Cups. In Rider-Waite's deck, this card means inability to decide, to leave or whether to return. You could see cups are filled with poison, emotional problems. In our deck, there is absolutely nothing similar. There is a certain tradition. You could notice some girls are gathering, having a conversation and exchanging their knowledge and experience. You portrayed 3 women at the table, and one of them is the main one, experienced, wise, smart, possesses some skills, knowledge that she is happy to share with others. There is nothing in common with Rider-Waite's deck. Here is a common table, a tradition. There are bowls. There is wine that they share. And 5 means a breakthrough, development. There are 2 young women listening to a 3rd woman who can share something with them. And they treat her with love and appreciation in every possible way. I think we can stop there. I think it was quite comprehensive, and you shared a lot of knowledge. Another time we can talk about the themes that were present in those minor arcade cards and their connection with major arcade cards, which we did not change from the traditional deck. It would be great if you could make some predictions using our deck. This will be very visual and it will evoke a vivid perception, and our goal is to evoke an emotional perception of minor arcade cards. The deck will be ready in a couple of months, and I hope that we can work with a real deck and show you how it actually works, as at the moment we are just using some sample cards. My colleagues asked me how they felt about this new deck in Russia, and also in the West. I would say people's attitude is great towards the new deck, but there isn't very high interest in this deck in Russia yet. But I am confident it will change. I think this is due to the lack of interest in the Marseille tarot cards in general.
Да, вследствие этого, да. А вот на Западе
In the West, we have a very positive reaction.
Мэри Грир,
Mary Sin, Marcus Katz, and Katie
Katie
Madison supported our project.
Флетшнули, симпатично и приятно.
They showed keen interest in our work. You also mentioned that you have received quite a few supportive emails. Yes.
Ну и так, да.
We also have a PDF book in English and in Russian. We have also added a French version. I think our French readers will appreciate this. I would also like to add that a webinar on the Marseille Tarot with Tatiana Melovidova is planned for the fall. Is it called Marseille to the Masses? Yes. Thank you very much. We will discuss more in our next broadcast.